Just waiting for it to... All right, we're on. I can see us on. It's not showing us on my screen, but it's showing us on my phone. So that's interesting.
Oh, awesome.
Okay.
Hello.
It's coming. Hi. So welcome, Ina. I can see, yep, I can see us on the screen. That is awesome. Okay, there we all are. We are live in the Your Parent Journey group. So I want to welcome Ina Neal into the group. She is a beautiful woman that I have had the pleasure of having a couple of really, really beautiful conversations with lately, around children, around parenting, around families. And I wanted to invite her into the group with this first session on the interview series on how to get our kids through lockdown okay. And this session is called Yes, I'm Getting Triggered, because I wanted to offer it in a playful and light way, even though there's quite a bit of depth to this topic. So, Ina, would you like to introduce yourself and just tell everyone a little bit about what you do and how you came to be doing it? Now you're going to be working with who you do.
The how I came is a much longer story. Hi, everyone. So my name is Ina Neal, and I founded a company called Innerlightened 3 years ago. And what I do is I work with young children from the age of 7. I work with teens, I work with parents, I work with just individuals. And what I do is I help to awaken the inner wisdom that we all have within us. I do it both informationally, and I do it even more than that. I do it, kinesthetically, where we just feel that wisdom within us and learn how to trust it, learn how to live from it. And yes, our children have all of this. I know everyone knows that, right? They're born with it. Of course they are. But we as parents, I know I did for a really long time, I forgot that bit. I thought that I was the one that needed to tell them everything, what they're needing to do. So I run workshops. I do it through workshops. I run workshops for children ages 7 to 12. And I teach life skills there, but it's more through stories so that children don't feel like they're being lectured. They're hearing a story, they're being able to relate to a story. We have, conversations about, has that ever happened in your life? And what would that look like if we did it this way, and just things like that. We also do kinesthetic activities, because children are we're all kinesthetic, but children are very, they don't want to sit in one spot for an hour, 15 minutes. So we're constantly doing different things, but within all of the skills that I teach 27 different skills, everything from self-esteem to self-confidence to how our minds work, how do we see the world and how it responds to us. I mean, they get all of it. Unconscious and conscious mind, and limiting and supportive beliefs, and what to do when we're having our own tantrums, when we're having our own pain, as Eckhart Tolle would call our pain bodies, what to do with that. And so I teach them both kinesthetically, informationally, and through creativity. And it's wonderful. And I also run workshops for women. And I also work one-on-one doing this work. I work with families doing this work. And so I do it in all different ways, but ultimately it's around informational, because we want to know why things work. But I also, you get it truly, you feel how to live in it. It's like, it's one thing to know that it's good to be in the present moment. It's another thing to feel what it feels like to be in the present moment. It's from there that we can create.
Yeah. And I think that's such a beautiful lead in to this topic, because feeling it, I mean, I don't know about you, but I know what it feels like to be triggered. And I guess what comes up for me when you were talking about that is, gosh, imagine, when I think about my journey and coming into being a parent, the transition that I went through, and having those tools, and now that our children do have the capacity or the accessibility to get those tools, you know, that we may not have had access to, most likely didn't have access to, because it just wasn't known. But you know, to have had them in our journeys growing up, you know, it definitely, it kind of leads me to the question around, you know, what brought you into this work? You know, how you know, how was your transition into becoming a mum, and how did that shift you into this place of doing this work that is, you know, about the felt sense of what's going on for us?
Yeah, thank you for asking. Yeah, that's well, the reason why, you know, what brought me to this work is why I teach this work. I have 4 children of my own, and they're very scattered in age. I've got a 24 and a 21-year-old. They just moved out just before the lockdown, which was awesome. Awesome in a way that, you know, it's just something that we all needed, which was great. And then we have 2 more children, again, boy and girl, and 13 and 8. So my whole life, I mean, I grew up in New York. Got married very early, started to have children very early, I married a Kiwi in New York. We spent, you know, 12, 13 years there. And I recognized for a long time that I was sad inside, that I loved being a mom. And I was probably the best at that I've ever been, the best at anything before, or at least that was my point of view from the way that I was parenting. I was a lot of a helicopter mom. I needed things to be really perfect. I needed them to be a certain way, you know, societal wise, you know, educational wise, the way that they showed up in the world.
Yeah.
And I happened to be really good at it. Poor things. I mean, don't get me wrong, we've had some really great times, but then we moved to New Zealand, and I've been here for almost 14 years. And right away, my husband and I started to have children, not on purpose. It was a beautiful, beautiful surprise. We thought we were done with 2, but as I became a mom again, there was a very strong disconnection between myself, who I was. I lost who I was. I think many women and moms and dads can say that as well. More than what it felt like even when I first became a mom. Second time around, just felt even more disconnected. And my 3rd child happened to be that one that didn't fit into the box. And it got really heavy. It got really painful. We talk about tantrums, talk about triggers. We were at each other. I think probably many of the parents here can relate that at times you get at each other. Yeah. And what's ultimately was happening is that I needed him to change, or I needed my partner to change, or I needed something else in my life to change, or I needed to get a better job. Not a better job. I didn't have a job. I didn't work. Actually was in the midst of getting my certification as a life coach. I also have a diploma in mental health here in New Zealand, and I have a background in child psychology back in my 20s. So I did a lot of studying around this work, but ultimately my practicing was all around my family, because my goal was to be home with them. Yeah. And so the triggers started to happen after my 4th little girl was born, and my 3rd son that was not in the box, he had really severe meltdowns. And because of that, because I was constantly putting it on him that I needed him to do something about it, I would have my own meltdowns, right? Adult meltdowns are equally meltdowns. They look a little bit different, and sometimes not. Trust me, I would get on the floor and I'd bang and scream and cry.
The adult tantrum, yes. The
adult tantrums, but it got really painful for me to the point where I actually didn't want to be here anymore. Yeah. There was a point where I thought, this can't be it, because I'm not serving my family even anymore. The one thing I thought I was really great at, I suck at, because I felt like I was hurting him. I felt like I was hurting myself. I felt like I was hurting everyone around us. Yeah. And then just one morning, I had almost a little bit of a miraculous awakening. I won't go into the details because it'll take a little while. But I had this question come up for me, and the question was, what if you're just doing it all wrong? What if there's nothing actually wrong with you, but you're just looking at it all wrong? You're seeing it all wrong. And I thought, well, I'm always talking to myself anyway. And so I decided to explore, if I'm doing it all wrong, what if I get to do, how can I do it right rather? And I truly remember asking that question out loud. And a book popped up in my head in that moment, and that was that inner guidance that we all have. We all have that intuitive self, that thing within us, that energy within us, that intelligence that reminds us we forgot something at home, or go back to the room and go get it, or you have something to do in that time that guides you into looking at your calendar, or those little moments. We have that within us. And that was that loud and clear moment that said, this is the book that you need to read. And it was a book that I had on my shelf. It was by Wayne Dyer. You have to believe it first before you can see it. I'm paraphrasing the title, but you can find it. It's front and red. I actually didn't read the book right away, but I dived into YouTube. And I ended up spending about a year just coming into learning how to shift my belief systems, the depth and core of why I was creating this kind of life. Where was I going wrong? And there was no wrong really, but really, how can I focus on the thing that I want to focus on? And after about 8 months to a year, I recognized that not only was I changing inside, life felt easier, life felt more joyful, life felt more happier, but everyone around me started to lighten up, and there were less tantrums, and there was more fun and more joy. And then I dived into teaching it to others.
Beautiful, beautiful. Gosh, yeah. I mean, so much of what you're saying is resonating, and it's really interesting to talk to so many different parents and get their different perspectives and different, transitions, the way that they transitioned into being a parent. But the way that you said, it was your third son that kind of was just like, whoa, that was like totally out of left field. I kind of thought I had it, and and then realized I didn't, and the how to do it a different way, and that was a similar experience with me, where I met my mentor, and he said to me, do you want to, would you like to do it a different way? And I just said, yes. Yeah. I was just in that, right at the bottom of that hole, and just didn't know what it actually looked like that I did want, but I knew it wasn't that.
That's right.
I knew it wasn't that, and I knew that there had to be a different way. So yeah, so that was my experience, and I absolutely hear that from so many parents that we don't get the kids we think we're going to get. And and they're there for the the absolute right reasons of inviting us to grow in all those different areas. So in terms of triggers, because this is what we're talking about here, and and it's interesting, when I put up a few of these posts today, I put up kind of this kind of scary image of me looking really triggered. And then I put up this other image, and I wanted to put that up because it's like, for me, it's been around the acceptance of the fact that we do get triggered. We're human, and it's part of the human experience. And for me, and I'd love to hear your experience on this, that acceptance has helped me to kind of provide a platform where I could change, where I could actually, accept where I was, and then be able to do something different, because I wasn't judging myself anymore for having the adult tanty and losing it and getting triggered in the first place. So yeah, that's a question that I'd love to hear your experience on, and what is the trigger? What is a trigger for you? What not necessarily in your experience, but what is a trigger? Where is it?
Great question. So a trigger is you feel it emotionally. You feel it emotionally. And the acceptance that you are talking about is acknowledgement that you're actually feeling it.
Mm.
So most of the time what happens is this is the way a trigger works, just step by step, right? You have a thought, whatever that thought is. Say your child comes in and he's whining about something, wanting something, right? Maybe right? So you might be in the middle of doing something. And at the moment, our children are around us all the time, right?
24/7.
24/7.
Yeah.
So a trigger is, so your child comes to you, or you have an experience that happens. With that experience, any experience, it doesn't even have to be with your children, it could be any experience. That experience brings on a thought. It's all of a sudden a perspective. It's all of a sudden a point of view that you have about something, right? Brings up a thought. We are not even aware of our thoughts. We have between 50,000 and 70,000 thoughts that stream through our minds all day long.
It's a lot of thoughts.
It's a lot of thoughts. It's a crazy number. And the reason why it's so much is because it's actually a lot of the thoughts are repetitive. And so just to give you an example of one of the thoughts that I had before I had this kind of awakening epiphany was life is hard. And so anything I did, I remember my husband at one point even said to me, "Why do you always say that? Why do you always say this is too hard?" Because I truly believed it. So that thought, life is hard, and whatever that thought is, so this is too hard. That thought automatically triggers an emotion. That is the trigger. It's an emotion. It is a tension inside my body that all of a sudden I'm feeling. I'm feeling it emotionally. I'm feeling it physically. Why? Because the amygdala part of our brain, the fight or flight response, when I'm thinking everything is hard, I'm receiving a message. I'm telling my body, I'm giving the message to my body that I'm in danger. The brain doesn't know to decipher, and I'm sure many of you, I'm sure you've heard this, Jacqueline, or the parents that are watching, when we have a saber-tooth tiger running after us, we don't want to stop and think, what should I do? We want to run to the 100% of our capacity to run and save our life.
Yeah.
The brain doesn't decipher between a saber-tooth tiger or an experience that I'm having. Maybe for some of you, it was losing a job. Maybe for some of you, it's your children's home learning and they're not getting it done. Those are all very powerful triggers that send a message to our body that I need to run. In that moment, our frontal lobes shut down. We cannot be thinking. We don't, otherwise we'd not be able to run away from the tiger, for example.
Yeah.
Right? And so the acknowledgement that I have a thought and I have an emotion means that you've just been triggered. So sometimes it's hard to catch the thought because we do it so much. But the easiest way to catch it is the minute you feel something, right? Any trigger that you feel, any charge that you feel, you're about to
react.
Pause.
Yeah.
Pause. Most people don't realize that there is a space between the emotion and the reactive action. There is a space there, and what's great is that space is according to how long you want that space to be. It could be a minute or it could be an hour. But if you give it any amount of space, and that's the acceptance and the acknowledgement that you are talking about, Jacqueline, the moment we become aware of, oh, my body feels tense, my body feels stressed, you want to come into the feeling, it feels this feeling, I've just been triggered. And so you want to make sure that you find a technique that'll serve you in that moment. So a very simple technique that I like to use, that I share all the time, is just put your hand on your heart and just take 2 or 3 or 4 or 10 deep breaths, whatever that looks like for you, right? For each one of us, it's going to look different. And the experience of how often you've had this experience will take more breaths. because we've got a belief around that experience.
Mm.
It is a neural pathway that we're just used to doing. And parents so often judge themselves after and think, I'm wrong, I'm bad, I've reacted poorly to my child. It isn't you, you're not bad. You just have this neural pathway that you've done over and over and over again. And it's about catching it and just retraining it. Or rather than retraining it, creating a new neural pathway, and that old one will eventually fall away.
Mm. So where, and yeah, love it. Yeah, absolutely. And so much of this is just, awareness. And I know for myself is that, gosh, I didn't even think I actually knew the word triggered when I was an early parent, when my children were really small. I had no awareness of the term, or where, obviously everything that we've been talking about, where it came from, what it meant. I was just so in it, that cycle that you're sort of talking about, and it would just repeat and repeat and repeat. And I guess what I wanted to ask, or sort of to bring out as a dialogue, was where do our certain set of triggers come from? Because obviously we have, there's such automatic behavior, they're cyclic, and we just, they just repeat, right, and going like this. So we, where do we see those? Where do we see those? And because I know that what we're talking about is kind of chucking a spanner in that cycle to interrupt it. But if we can just get an idea of where that comes from, to understand those cycles first, that's what's definitely helped me just grow the awareness, okay, increase my awareness.
Okay, so that is, it's a beautiful question, and it's a very important question to help in awareness. It's just it's a very in-depth kind of question to get into. I can tell you generally, and this as well, our beliefs come from our childhood. Mm. Our beliefs come from a childhood. We come into this world, I think it was actually Wayne Dyer. I love what he says. He says, and that's, whatever you believe in, God, you believe in nature, you believe just the miracle of borning a baby, right? Or carrying a baby. Wayne called it God. So we'll just call it that. For everyone, it's whatever it looks like, right? The universe, source energy, just the magic of
creation.
Thank you. The magic of creation. So we have a baby, we get pregnant, and we have this baby for 9 months, and we trust the process. And we do the going to the doctor and looking at the sonograms, but really there's nothing we can do. Mm-hmm. We can take some vitamins here, and we can eat really well. And, but ultimately the baby grows. The baby grows for 9 months, the baby grows, and then the baby is born. And then we say to this creation process, thank you so much. You did such a beautiful job. I'll take over now. Right? I just love that.
I've got this now. Thank you. Yeah, beautiful.
And so what we do is we start to nurture this child. But what we don't realize is that we have our own limiting beliefs that we are manifesting in our world, that we are acting out, that we are creating. So if I don't believe that I'm good enough, just a simple one, because that's such a huge one for so many. It's probably the most popular.
I think they all lead back to that one, don't they?
Yeah, they do. They do. There's a few others. Absolutely. There's a handful of others that, that I go through my courses, and I'm sure you do too. But the I'm not good enough is that. And so what happens is that we get into our heads, and as we start to raise this child, we don't realize that energetically and emotionally, we are putting that onto our children. Right? We're putting that onto our children. So I'll give you a really simple example. And so just to finish up with that, we're putting it on our children. Our children are looking at the world from wide eyes as these sponges, and they're just seeing it from that point of view of yours and your partners and whoever else is in their, their teachers, their communities. All of these beliefs that all of these different people have in their lives, social media, all of these beliefs, this child is absorbing. Now you were that child. And you are now growing up, and then we do that to our own children. So I'll just give you a really little example, because I love teaching through stories. It was about a year ago. My son had stepped into intermediate. It was his first year in intermediate. And halfway into the year, I'm recognizing that he's not doing his homework. And so I've been already doing this work, right? And so I'm recognizing it and I'm mentioning it to him. Hey, I see that you're not doing your work. And yeah, my third child.
Yep.
You're not doing your work. And he said, yeah, I'm not, and my initial feeling, I was triggered. That trigger came from the belief and the idea that you got to get your work done because you're not going to pass and you're not going to be successful in your life.
Mm-hmm.
I've just painted a huge picture in my head around what he's not going to be successful in. And really it's just looking at he's just not doing his work. The difference, right? But nobody's going to fault me for thinking that. We all think that, and I understand it. And so I recognized that I let him know that I'm aware of it, and then we left it. About a week later, I get an email from his teacher saying just that to me. And I came to him and I said, I can tell, I got an email from your teacher. And he said, yeah, I know. She told me that she was going to email you and blah, blah, blah. So my initial feeling was and that was a challenge that I worked through in my healing, and that is fear of judgment of others, particularly as a mother.
Yep.
And that was, oh my gosh, what is this teacher going to think of me? That I'm not forcing or making my kid, that I don't have the control. And I recognized that because it triggered me. It triggered my feeling. It triggered my emotion. And I came into my breath. I did my meditations, whatever I needed to do to come into that centeredness, that grounding of myself, and start from scratch, right? Start from not the old belief, but start from scratch. And I needed to work through all of those beliefs about he's not going to be successful and he's not going to pass to the next grade level, or she's not going to, she's going to think that I'm not a good parent. All of these beliefs that I've picked up as a child that I've now been using in my parenting, I needed to halt that because I felt it in my body. It didn't feel good. My body felt, you can always acknowledge where, if you pay attention to your body, you will recognize where you feel that heaviness. Some of us feel it in our heart. Some of us feel it in our whole body. Some of us feel it in our gut. Some of us feel it in our heads. Some of us feel it in our throat.
Yeah.
All parts. Some parents say, I feel it everywhere. There's no right or wrong, but you're gonna feel it. It's gonna be there. And so anyway, the short part of the story is for me to be able to shift the trajectory of that. I gave him rein. I said, I give you full rein. He ended up getting a bad mid-year report card, and then learned from the experience and ended up doing better than he's ever done since he started school, because he made that choice. But I didn't put an attachment on him. I dealt with my own triggers.
Yeah, because I guess what I'm hearing in that is, the trigger just makes it about or when you can reveal what's underneath the trigger. So much of that stuff has absolutely nothing to do with your son doing his homework.
Nothing.
Nothing about what's actually happening in that moment.
That's right.
And I think that's been the biggest learning for me. It's like, wow, that and not being able to respond to what's actually happening in the moment, and whether I'm actually responsible for it or not.
That's right.
And that's, I guess, what I got so much out of with your story, is that you were able to kind of retract that responsibility, of him doing his homework, and give the choice over to him, and then that's what happened, and the trigger's removed. So beautiful.
Just a quick disclosure, I've been doing this for a long time, and I'm still not great at it. That just happened to be a success story, just putting it out there. It's consistently a journey, but the more we awaken to our moments, to our own energy, to our own triggers, the better it gets, and the easier it is. And that's when I realize, and as well as teach it, is that life is actually um, can be very can be lived with a lot more ease,
Yeah.
with a lot less stress, no matter what is going on outside of you. And that's really the end goal for me, is to, how do I keep getting better in that space? And from there, I get to teach my own children, and then I get to teach, the children in the workshops, and the parents and the adults and individuals.
Yeah, no, I love that disclaimer because I think it's just so relevant, and even though both you and I work with parents, we've been on this journey for a long time, and we still live those moments every single day. And what I wanted to bring in was, the taking it from outside of ourselves and bringing it back here. That's what I was getting in what you were saying, in terms of, okay, everything's kind of out here, and I think that, there's so much sort of the conditioned response to have it out here and to have the finger pointing, and it's your fault that I'm triggered, and there's blame involved, and everything is outside of ourselves. And as soon as we can bring it inside of ourselves, and I think that you were beginning to start to talk about some of the tools that you use around and in that space between, and I love the way that you languaged it, whether it can be 30 seconds, a minute, an hour, whatever's needed in that moment to come back inside, and to bring everything, the reference point, back here. Breathing, meditation, awareness, just bring it in. What other tools could you talk about in terms of that kind of reversal of where the focus is?
Yeah. So I teach a lot of different tools, because I feel like there's no one size fits all for everyone. I teach through something that you want to do, something that's going to be easiest for you. So a huge tool that I use is just going out into nature. Just going out into nature, because what you're wanting to do is, sorry, my cat just walked in. We just, we look at the really big picture, and it scares the crap out of us. How am I going to fix this really, really big situation? And it just doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel like we're even capable of getting to that space, So there's a lot of different tools. The first and foremost is always going to be becoming aware. You must become aware. You cannot use any tools. If I'm yelling at my kid, if I'm worried, not even yelling, but if I'm sitting in my bedroom and worried about my kid, and the thoughts of worry and fear and what's going to happen to him and her and whatever that looks like, I'm in that spinning cycle. So the first thing we need to do is just, oh my God, oh my goodness, I'm here. And you can even use a symbol. You can use a symbol to help you to kind of jump out of it a little bit. That symbol might look like, this is only what's coming for me, is my mind is on that hamster wheel. I'm going to jump off. Right? Just doing that, just using that as a symbol. Or thinking about something that's completely different, like maybe using the moon or the sun, just having a symbol that's going to help you to jump out of it.
Yeah, I love that hamster wheel reference. That's great. I can just imagine it going, and wow, what would happen if I just stepped off?
Jump, yeah.
Yeah, it's just,
you can even feel it, right? You can feel the energy of it shift.
Right, and it can still go.
That's okay.
I'm just watching it.
That's right. That's right. That's right. And that's with big things, and that's with even little things. If your child comes to you in that moment and is requiring something from you, and you find yourself in your body getting triggered, I'm on the hamster wheel, I'm just going to jump off.
Yeah.
And then don't expect yourself to all of a sudden get happy and be fully aligned with yourself. That's a big thing that we do, is we beat ourselves up. And I always say, be kind to yourself. And it is not because I'm trying to be compassionate. there's actually a reason why we must be kind to ourselves. And that is because if we're not kind to ourselves, we're just going more further down that rabbit hole or that hamster wheel. The minute we're judging ourselves, if I'm jumping off and I say, you're such a dumbass, I'm jumping right back on.
Yeah.
And so just if you're just starting out, realize that you're going to keep jumping on and off. You're going to keep jumping on and off. And the key here is to be aware each time and jump off again. It's like when you're teaching your children to ride a two-wheel bike, or you're teaching them maths and they don't get it the first time, which they don't. We encourage them. We say, get back on. You got this. Say that to yourself. Get back off. You got this.
Yeah. Yeah, beautiful. And I think what was coming up for me while you were talking was, you know, this coming back into the moment, you know, just coming back into the moment. And what I was thinking of was, you know, I've had a couple of experiences, and I've had loads of these experiences, but you know, when I'm in the trigger and something was, you know, the little voice that's saying, oh my God, this is exactly what happened last week. You know, and I'm straight back there again, and then I'm straight back into the future going, and it's going to happen next week as well. And, you know, so I'm either here or there, and I'm not here. You know, I'm not right here. I'm not responding to this present moment.
That's right.
So yeah, I love the sort of the hamster wheel, or, you know, any other idea or visualization, or, you know, just sort of tool that can be used to just bring me back here.
Right. And then the next step would be, because you want to keep following it up, you want to keep that momentum going. The next step would be, I would say, just come into your body. You know, you can feel where the trigger is, or you can even just focus on, you know, just focus on your hands, like taking your complete attention off it. Focus on your feet. It sounds really weird. It sounds almost, I mean, silly and ridiculous, but coming into your body. So here you've come into your mind, you've come into your thoughts, and you've stopped the stream. That's coming into the present moment. So then you're taking it further, and you're stepping into feeling into your body. That's connecting your mind and your physical body.
Yeah.
And just being in that moment and just doing that, just that practice is putting your hand on your heart and taking a deep breath. And just being in that breath until you can recognize that you've had a shift in your energy, in that energy self.
Yeah.
And if you just did that, jump off the hamster wheel, come into my body, and just breathe as long as you need to until you have a little bit more clarity, that will change anybody's life if they allowed it to be regular and consistent. At least just start there. Don't start anywhere else. Just if you're going to start and that resonates with you, start with those 3 steps. Jump off, come into my body, come into my heart space, and then what? You'll know what's then.
Yeah, because I mean, I guess just linking back to something that you said a little bit earlier, which was that bigger picture, right? And I remember, you know, I guess when I first started increasing my own awareness around this, and it was like, it's too much, it's too big, it's too hard, you know, I can't do all of that. But when you're sort of, you know, talking about coming into the body, because I think I operated from here up, you know, it's like I was a head on legs. And that was kind of how I operated in the world, because I just lived up in that space. And to bring awareness to the hands or to the feet, or, you know, to just simply where I'm sitting, the connection of my body to my seat, or the feet on the floor. And another thing that I use with my clients as well is to just bring my hands onto the heart and breathe into the connection that I'm feeling, you know, and it sounds so simple. I know exactly what you're saying. It's like, oh, surely that's just too simple, you know, it's not going to work, it's too simple. And I know what you're saying. It's almost like you kind of feel a bit silly saying it, because it's not rocket science. It's really not rocket science, but the simpler it is, I feel, the more likely that I'm going to do it. And, definitely more likely the parents that I've been working with are going to do it. It's like, wow, actually, I can stop and just take a couple of deep breaths in.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can do that. And noticing the cycle that got me there and got them there, and how much my state, their state changes.
Yeah.
With just those 2 or 3 deep breaths. It's incredible.
That's right. And this is, you can teach this to, if you choose to practice it and get good at it, you can teach this to your children. You can do it with your children, because rather you're teaching them how to become aware of their bodies. And that's what I teach in all my workshops. And it's so magical, actually, because children are still quite connected to their bodies and their spiritual selves. And so when I teach it to them, they're like, I can feel it. And we communicate. We open up our energy spaces. It's extremely powerful. And so you can teach that to your children, just breathing into that heart space and just feeling what it feels like. Just saying hello to it.
Yeah. Like, I think for me, what I was going to say was reacquainting myself with that, because
I am.
Yeah, and that was linking back to what you'd said a bit earlier, feel like we've lost that connection with ourselves. And I definitely felt that I'd lost that connection with myself. And, the work that I've done and the work that I do is a reminder, a reminder back to that. And it's beautiful. So what, there's my next, there's my
we've got a ginger one too.
Ginger Tom. Oh, yeah, that's my Ginger Tom. He's beautiful. This guy is involved. He comes into a lot of the session work that I do, which is amazing. So intuitive and healing, beautiful. So my next question to you, would be, what stands in the way? What stands in the way of jumping off the hamster wheel and taking those breaths in, and because even though I think when I first started practicing these tools, I knew them and I had them, but still sometimes just something would stand in the way of me doing them. What's something that you can add there?
What stands in the way? It's being on that hamster wheel. I mean, it's that simple. It's not becoming aware of it. And it's also giving yourself permission to be okay to not be perfect at it, to make the mistake of, if you're going to jump off and you're going to jump back on and do the old pattern, acknowledge that you did jump off.
Yeah.
Just acknowledge and say, I did jump off. But really what stands in the way is it's always going to come back to the awareness. If if someone is not used to it, it's okay to become aware afterwards also. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't matter when you become aware of it, because whatever movement you make in the direction that you want to go, you want to have an end result. Not a specific attached end result, but you want to have an end result in a sense of, if I'm being triggered by one of my children all the time, my end result might look something like this. My relationship with my child is getting better and better. Very simple end result, right?
Yeah.
So you want to have an end result. So my end result is having a relationship with my child where it's just getting better and better. And you want to affirm that I have a relationship with my child that's getting better and better. Yeah. Because normally we're focusing always on the patterns of what we're doing wrong and what they're doing wrong. So again, changing our focus. Yeah. So not when we're triggered, but when it's over or when it hasn't even begun yet, becoming aware of your end result.
Beautiful. Yeah, I think the two things that I was feeling while you were talking was, and this is a line that I use quite a lot with my clients, is, how okay can I be in this moment? How okay can I be when I'm not okay? Or these things, when I am in the trigger. And that's one piece. But the other piece was, around the celebration, which is what you're talking about. It's like, you know, every time we spot it, every time we increase that awareness, even just slightly, you know, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, it's, you know, it's worthy of celebration. It's definitely worthy of celebration.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's, you know, it's also really important to set a clear intention as well before it happens again, way before it happens again, because, you know, it's hard to catch it in the moment if
Mm.
you're not used to it. I still sometimes don't catch it in the moment. Maybe not so much with my kids, maybe sometimes with my kids, but with my work, with my, you know, just with my relationship with myself, sometimes we get into that kind of, you know, you awaken in a moment and you're like, how long have I been thinking this thought? You know,
Yeah.
so for everyone it's different. So to get ahead of it, you want to set some clear intentions of what you do want rather than what you don't want. And you want to do it not in the heat of the moment when you're having that tension and that pain and the adrenaline streaming through your body. We want to set an intention, like I shared, whatever that intention, whether it's with your work, whether it's through your children. It might be just in the morning, waking up and saying, today is going to be the best day that we've had in a long time. Going really general, and just keep reminding yourself of that. You know, something that I used to get really, really triggered is morning routine when they did go to school. We had a really awful morning routine, and that was, you know, we were always late for school. There was a lot of screaming, come on, get out of the house, and lunchtime, I mean, rather, making lunches, and there's the jumper, and there, you know, that feeling of chaos, and we were late always, which was actually very traumatic for my children.
Mm.
And that was one thing that I intentionally knew I wanted to jump off that hamster wheel around. So I would go to sleep and wake up in the morning having a clear intention. Our mornings are going to go really well. There's going to be peace and ease and love around it, no matter what's going to happen.
And go, you know, I know for me the energy, just the energy in my mornings is just completely different when I come from that place.
Yeah, and it got to a point where, and for a week, for 2 weeks, for 3 weeks, it was challenging because I would find myself jumping out of it.
Yeah.
But as the weeks went by, it became easier and easier. And now, even though they're not going to school, now our mornings are that.
Yeah.
They're easy. They're on time. There's no challenges. I mean, I remember being so grateful for rice bubbles because one of the mornings, a whole box of rice bubbles fell all over the place. And we laughed. And we laughed and we swept them up together. And I remember pulling out the vacuum, and one of them was vacuuming around what was left over. And I remember thinking, I'm so grateful because I actually wanted to vacuum today. And they got it started. And so it was beautiful. Whereas a few years before that, I would have had a meltdown.
Yeah, absolutely. I absolutely agree, and I think that's bringing me to the next question so beautifully. You know, what is the gift? Yeah, we're talking about the gifts that our triggers can give us.
Oh,
yeah.
oh, wow.
So many gifts if we can choose to see them like the rice bubbles, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Well, I teach that every trigger, whether it's a very, you know, traumatic trigger from childhood where there needs more clearing and more healing energetically, to the most tiniest trigger where something, you know, had fallen on the carpet and it's messy, right? Every trigger is a moment for us to awaken. To how do I want to choose to respond in this moment?
Yeah.
And that's the question that I asked myself when I was awakening is how do I want to show up in this moment?
Beautiful. Yep, absolutely. And I think that's I think that's my little mantra now. My little, you know, my little inner voice says whenever I'm faced with a triggering situation, I can feel my body starting to rise and like, how am I going to respond?
What do I want to do here? What is my end goal? Am I
Yeah.
going to have a screaming match here, or are we just going to let it kind of, go slow, go easy, come from a space of light
Mm.
and
Yeah.
love
Yeah.
and alignment?
Mm. And that for me, I actually felt when I shifted from that space of being in it, like in the chaos, or in the moment, and in the trigger of it all, to this observer, observers, looking in, going, okay, this is where we are, this is what's going on, how am I going to respond? And that place of choice is just so powerful.
It's where the gold is.
It's where the gold is.
It's where the gold is.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just always coming back into, how do I want to show up? My question was, what is my purpose now? Every time I felt triggered, my question I asked myself, what is my purpose now? And it wasn't the big purpose, like, how am I going to impact the world?
Yeah.
That came on its own. I didn't even think that there was even a thought of the creative part of actually sharing this with the world. There was no thoughts in that in the beginning. It was, what is my purpose in this moment? And I would receive, be kind, be loving, come from a place of ease. We all got this. Life is meant to be good. Show up as that. And it was from that kind place. It was from that kind place.
Yeah, I love that. And I think, what came up for me then was, to ourselves, we want to be kind to our children. Of course we do, but being kind here first, which is just, it's such a big part of it. And, the reference that you made earlier around, life being hard, and the beliefs that we have, it just reminded me of a post that somebody put up the other day. And it was something along the lines of, sort of being sympathetic or empathetic, compassionate to mums out there, because they're the ones that, can't have a nap and can't have a shower by themselves and can't, do all of these things. And I thought, it's the belief that just stands in the way, that we can't do those things because we're parents. And there's absolutely no reason why we can't do those things, but that belief is just such a massive block.
Well, that belief of I'm not enough, if we keep holding on to that belief, if we're going to go deep in and we're going to keep holding on to that belief, we're going to do the things unconsciously to sabotage the enoughness. Because if one of the things that I love to do to keep me grounded is to go take a bath. Or to take half an hour and just read a book that I love to read, or step outside without any children. Great, take your children if you have to. But if you have an opportunity to say go outside, and we say I can't do it, what we're actually doing is we're just arguing for that old belief that we picked up way back when. We are sabotaging it. So just again acknowledging, well, really, I can't.
I was talking to a client yesterday and saying, even just going outside of the front door and to the letterbox and back, or around the house, is often enough to just create that space. Create that space between that you articulated so beautifully. And I just think it's those moments, that can shift everything.
That's right.
Absolutely.
I go and sit on my curb.
Yeah.
When I can't leave, I leave. I walk out the door very gently, and I just sit on the curb, and I feel the sun shining on my face, and I just start breathing, and right away there's just clarity in that space.
Yeah, I often will share with parents that the toilet door, just close the toilet door and go and take 2 or 3 deep breaths. Doesn't matter if you need a pee or not. But that, that boundary of just creating that sacred space for yourself. And I still know so many parents who can't go to the toilet by themselves, and they haven't created that really sacred space of, what, it's important that I'm kind to myself first. So then I can I can embody that kindness, and I can bring that into the relationship with everyone around me. So yeah, really.
Well, you can't share what you don't have. You know, if I want to give you potato chips, or, you know, I don't know why I said potato chips, so American too.
You must also.
If I want to share potato, yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe I'm wanting potatoes. If I want to share potato chips with you, but I don't have a bag, I can't actually give it to you.
Yeah.
I can say I'll give it to you later. I can say I used to have it, and then if you were around then, I'd give it to you. But if I
Mm,
don't have it in this moment, I can't actually give it to you. And it's the same thing about when you're about being kind, is if I don't have the kindness that I am wanting to give to you, if I don't have it within me, if I'm not holding it for myself, if I'm not holding love for myself. So when I said, what is my purpose now? It is to be kind. It meant here first. Because if I don't
yes.
have it in here, I can't give it to you. If I'm
Mm,
not standing in a place of love for myself, I can't give you love. The love that I pass over to you will be conditional, because the love that I have for myself is conditional. If I'm
mm,
going to respond in a good way, then I'll like myself in that moment. If I'm going to respond in a shitty way, then I'm not going to like myself in that moment. That's what we do to our kids as well.
mm. Beautiful. And that was going to be my last question, was how can we support our children when they're triggered? Yeah. And I mean, that's kind of what you've been talking about, is sort of a general thing as well. But maybe if we can bring that in and just discuss that a little bit, and then you can tell us about what you are starting to do with children at the moment. Because I know
Mm.
before we spoke, you were sharing a couple of things that you've got going on for the kids at the moment, because I know that you know, when if we're not embodying that in ourselves, you know, that is a huge piece of what we can do for our children, is to, you know, not pointing the finger at them and expecting them to change their behavior, but coming back, you know, it's almost like the finger goes around like that, and, you know, bringing it back here to ensure that that kindness is coming from this place first. So what else can we do for our children to support them?
Okay, so first step is supporting yourself. You can't step away from that. I cannot support my son. I keep referring to him, but I can't support any of my children unless I first, you know, connect with myself, connect to my breath, connect to my kindness, and stop the stream of attaching what I think this kid is going to do or not do. Really remove myself. And as you get better at that, the way to support your children is exactly the same way. But if you're wanting to use language with them, say your children are having a meltdown and you've already aligned yourself and you're kind of in that space.
Mhm.
So often what we want to do is we want to fix the situation, right? We want to fix what's going on with them. And if they're having any kind of meltdown, whatever that looks like, it could even be a little tiny one where you see they're just starting to get annoyed. Okay. So what's happening is that they're starting to feel triggered.
Mm,
They're not any different from us. They had a thought about something. They're starting to feel triggered in their body, and they're going to react in an old pattern that they've reacted many, many times. Depends on the situation. If it's a sibling argument, that'll look the same. If it's a school trigger, that'll look the same. If it's, you know, whatever that looks like. So if
mm,
you created a space of alignment for yourself and you want to use language, rather than trying to fix the behavior, not rather, I'm going to say don't try to fix the behavior. I'm going to be very clear on that. And the reason that is, the reason why that is not just not just, you know, emotionally, but physiologically, they can't receive any input from you. They can't receive it because their frontal lobes have just shut down, because they're receiving the message that they're in danger, and they don't have a conscious thinking mind working in that moment. Did you receive that? Just because I saw that there was a bit of tweaking. Yeah.
yep.
So they can't receive any. So even with children, say a child comes to you and says, I'm really sad about my friend who's really ignoring me and hurting my feelings. just something like a relationship kind of trigger. If you come in with, oh, don't worry, maybe your friend, your friend is, maybe she was in a bad mood. If you're trying to fix it in that moment, your child can't receive it. And what they're thinking to themselves is, I'm not being supported. I'm not being heard.
Yeah.
I'm not being heard. And so what you want to do is you want to acknowledge what your child is experiencing. So you want to say clearly, I can feel that you are really upset about this. Tell me more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Tell me more. If it's an argument with a sibling, I can feel that you're really upset. You can say angry, use the language, because they might not know how to use it. In my workshops, we have an umbrella word. I call them grungies. And then we label all the different grungies. We've got frustration, we've got anger, we've got sadness, we've got all of these things. And so sometimes they, as children, especially younger ones, can't access that. Have a word. Have a word. I can feel that you're feeling really sad about that. Tell me more. And let them download. We so often want to jump in because we don't want our children to feel pain, but their triggers are their gifts too. They're learning how to be resilient. If they never felt pain and then they went out into the real world and pain happened, because it does, they're not going to know what to do with it. What if their pain is their gift to them, where you get to be their guide rather than telling them how to deal or not deal with it?
Yeah, exactly.
So the first step you want to do is you just want to acknowledge what they're feeling and what they're thinking, if they've already shared. So I hear you, I see you, and I feel you. I hear that you're really upset with your friend. I hear that you're really upset with the schoolwork that you're going through. I hear that it feels hard for you and you're not getting it. And I feel that you are this emotion. And then be silent. Silent is gold. Just let them say it. Even if they're not saying it and they're crying, let the crying be. Even if they're being aggressive with something, of course, there is a boundary between hurting themselves or someone else, or just being angry. Let them be angry. It is their energy that's actually moving, that is that is being felt and not needing to be served. So it's leaving our bodies.
Yeah. 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 Beautiful.
And sometimes that can take an hour, especially when you're in the beginning of practicing this. And sometimes it can take 5 minutes. It depends on the trigger. And then you want to ask them, and once they've downloaded all, ask them, what do you need? And you can offer. You can say, I feel like you might need a hug. Would you like one? You can say, hey, I feel like a walk. Would you like to come for a walk with me? So you're not leaving them, but you're being with them.
Yeah.
And so they want to be seen, they want to be heard, they want to be felt, they want it to move, that energy. And then they want, and then they want to be asked, what do they want, rather than us always assuming that we think they don't know.
I think the other thing that I've definitely done with my kids is, the seeing and the hearing, which I love, and it goes so against the natural kind of tendency to just go in and fix, and make it stop, and especially if it's big, loud emotion, and also checking in with them. Is that what I'm hearing? Is that what I'm hearing in terms of, I'm feeling that you're really angry, or I'm hearing that you're really angry. Is that right? Is that what I'm hearing? Because I know sometimes my boys go, no, that's not what it is at all. I'm like, okay, all right, and it can almost give them another check as well, that I see. It's like they can sometimes, if they don't actually know what it is, they'll be like, I know it's not that, but now I realize it's this.
Right. Yeah. And it's in our own silence that will help them to realize what it is.
Mm. Mm.
It's in our silence of, okay, that if that's not it, I'm here.
Yeah. And I know a question that I've had from a couple of parents is around that if the big emotion or the big expression doesn't stop, if it just keeps on going and keeps on going and keeps on going. Have you had much experience with that, Ina?
I have. I've had it in my own life, and I've had it with the families that I work with and the children that I work with. It's the instructions are consistently the same.
Yeah.
And it might take a whole day. Your children will not forever stay in that space.
Mm.
But when something new is introduced, especially this practice, the child won't necessarily jump into, oh, I feel heard and seen and I'm all good. Sometimes it takes a whole day. And those are the really big emotions that you're talking about.
Yeah.
I can share another story example if you'd like, that where I spent a whole day in that space. And this is with a child that does know the difference, that does know how to step out of it. Would you like me to share it?
Yeah, please do.
Okay. So again, my beautiful child, it was a few weeks ago. He came in from the garden. It was in the morning. He came in from the garden, and he had a stick stuck in his heel that he stepped on, a piece of wooden stick. And he came in with his trigger, and his trigger, for example, what some children have that happen to them and they just gently step in and can, deal with it. He is not great at dealing with those experiences. And so he came in with a huge meltdown. And of course, I was like, oh my gosh, there's a stick stuck in his heel. And, I had to distract him for a moment and pull it out, and there was still a piece stuck. And what happened for him is that that piece created a lot of fear of, oh my gosh, am I going to get infected? Am I going to need somebody to cut it out? Just all of that fear. And I recognized that within him. And so we just sat all day, not all day, sorry, we sat in the morning, and I let him move through that. I let him cry. I let him yell at me for pulling it out of the heel. I allowed all that because I knew that he was really triggered within that pain around it. And throughout that day, I recognized that he kept being triggered. So there was an argument with my daughter, with his sister, and he was bugging her and he was being mean to her. And I could tell there was trigger there. And I would the moment I would hear the trigger in there, I would come, and I would just be in my presence. There was no fixing. If I needed to remove my daughter from, harm or, even verbal harm or something, I would. But I was constantly being forced to come into my center and let him feel all this pain.
Mm.
Sometimes it was, hey, I can feel that you're really angry. And there was no need for an explanation. And sometimes it was just silence. And then we went for a walk, and my husband mentioned the heel again, and he got really triggered, and he walked off on his own and went home. And, in that moment, again, I started to think, oh my gosh, we're on a lovely walk. Why does he have to act that way? But I had to come into my presence again. And I came into the house and I released that energy and just allowed him to be. I just allowed him to feel it. I didn't look for any opportunity to fix or have a teaching moment.
Mm.
And so it was an all day kind of process. Every time he would get triggered, I would just be with it with him energetically. And it's a practice. And that same night, I went to bed quite early. I was tired. And he came into the bedroom to say goodnight. And he kind of cuddled into me. And he said to me, thank you so much for supporting me all day.
Mm.
And so they don't want us to fix anything. They just want our presence.
Mm.
They
Yeah.
have that in them. And so in those really, really big emotions, just connect to your center and then be with them. And your own wisdom will come through eventually. allowing that space to kind of happen, but don't have a teaching moment is really the core. Don't have a teaching moment in their meltdowns, in their triggers. Just be the observer as you are being for yourself, be that for them, and you will teach them how to be the observer for themselves.
Yes. Yeah, I think what came up for me then was, when ourselves as adults or our children are like in that moment of seeing red, if they're so angry, everything's red and there's nothing that can be seen. And I think you touched on it a bit before about, not being able to receive, anything remotely close to a teaching moment. But I guess what I wanted to bring in there was, when it's actually over the line and crossing into the child verbally abusing or actually directing their anger at another person, be it their mum or their dad or their siblings, or and on the other side of that, knowing that as parents, the biggest gift that we can give to our children is to be that calm in the storm, but not being a pounding board, or not being that person that just receives all of their all of that aggression or emotion. And I know that I remember when I kind of had a big shift in my own journey with my oldest boy, when he was going through a very challenging time. And I just realized a lot of his anger was directed at me. And my thoughts were, that I know that a lot of parents have had that with younger children, and then had their children grow up and, to being men, and the men are still doing that. So, how to balance, and how to find that line of what's okay and what's not okay.
That's right. That's right. Well, it's to have your own boundaries is important. Of course it is. When it comes to that, when it comes to, to that kind of side of the spectrum, yeah, you're not going to just sit around and allow them to verbally or physically hurt you. And so again, that comes to finding your alignment and getting really good at that. Because if you have that experience often, I would first of all say reach out for help and support, because you're not going to be able to get good at this fast enough, because that's not who the child is. That is a behavior that is nothing wrong with them, but it's just gone that far. And that's okay. That's okay. There's nothing broken here, but it is about also acknowledging, hang on, I get that this work does to some extent resonate with me, but I'm not sure how to find that grounding within that space. So I would say reach out for help. Not because anything is broken, but because you may need to really get the gist of it, get the feeling of it, learn how to do it, if that's something that you're called to do, a little bit quicker.
Yeah.
A little bit quicker. And that's what mentors and coaches are. I have a mentor. I have a coach. That doesn't stop in my life. I do courses, whatever that looks like. That doesn't stop in my life, because we all need that kind of support. But if you're to, so I'm going to say to everyone, do you have your support person? Do you have your coach that will help you to align with who you are? So, to respond, yeah, we don't want to condone behavior like that. So, we don't want to. So when do we find, so it's not about holding the space for someone, it's not about condoning bad behavior. It's about really realizing that in that moment, you actually cannot help that person regardless. And so if there is some danger violently, physically or verbally, you can say, and this is what I said, and I've experienced it myself, and I've said, this is not mine, and I will not take that from you, and I'm not feeling comfortable in this situation. So I'm not leaving you, but I need to remove myself because this is not acceptable for me.
Yeah, I think that bringing that piece in is really valid and, really valuable, because I know that, I myself definitely had major boundary issues around what was okay and what wasn't okay, in terms of, you know, in my early years as a parent, and also the connection, you know, the connection with our children, bringing all of it back to the connection, because that's where it stems from, you know, in my own experience and with a lot of the work that I'm doing with mums and dads. And you know, a lot of people say that it's attention seeking, you know, these big sort of outbursts, and you know, and the way that I love to language it is connection seeking. You know, if a child's not feeling seen, generally, you know, in their life, then feeling seen when they're in the middle of a big emotional outburst is going to be even, you know, is going to be challenging for them as well. And you know, during this time right now that we've all been in lockdown, we've all been with our kids, you know, for these extended period of time, there is a lot of, you know, emotion going on, and a lot of, and especially in our children, not fully understanding all of the circumstances and the, you know, the background around the current, you know, time that we're in. So yeah, I think it's and I love what you're saying around getting support. You know, there is so much more support out there these days than our parents ever had when they were raising us. And the fact that we can sit here on a Facebook Live and share, you know, our wisdom and our experience together to support the parents out there is incredibly powerful for, you know, not having to stay in those spaces of, you know, of patterns of behavior that we find ourselves in our lives as parents. So, you know, huge gratitude for that. And just to wrap this up, Ina, that was the last thing I was going to say. Yes, I have a mentor and I have 2 coaches as well. And, you know, is even having, you know, that definitely for the, that sort of greater level of support, but also having these other adults that support you as a parent as well, because even just being around those big emotions that our children have, you know, it comes into us, and to be able to share that with other parents in groups like this, and with our, you know, closer friendships, adult friendships of, you know, wow, this is what happened today. It was really big, and can I just share a bit of it with you, you know, so that I don't have to hold that all for myself, and holding space for each other in that way, you know, alongside these higher levels of support with mentors and coaches. You know, it's just so empowering and, you know, vital in our lives as parents, I feel.
Well, it's, you know, we're always co-creating together. And just to kind of, you know, go along with what you're saying is that there's, you know, you're coming into a group, or you have a mentor, or you have some course that you're doing, and you're creating a space in that, because I run masterminds and things like that as well. So what's happening is that when somebody comes in to share, this is what's happened for me, that vulnerability is a healing instantly. There is an instant healing when I can just I can just put it out there and say, this is what happened in my life. And there's a shift in energy instantly. Now, it doesn't mean that it's all left. Of course, it again depends on the depth of the pain. Has it been painful for a while? Is this a cycle that you've going through, or is it just something that happened? Normally it's the cycle, even, you know, whatever that looks like. But the minute we say it, the minute we become vulnerable and say it in a safe space, there's healing in that instantly. Like, how many times have we said, we've put it out there to someone that we trust, and all of a sudden you say, wow, I feel lighter.
And I think it goes both ways as well, doesn't it? For the person who's sharing and the others who are hearing it. It's just
that's
like,
right.
Oh God, I'm normal.
That's right.
Yeah.
And exactly. And through our stories, it's the other side. That was exactly what I wanted to say, is the other side says, oh, wow, me too.
Yeah.
And I'm going to learn from that, whether it's consciously or not. Wow, me too. And I'm going to learn through that. So now this other person is healing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then that energy, uplifts and things. So it's all a momentum, and it's just a one step at a time, one moment at a time. Everything is one moment at a time.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Well, this has been an absolute pleasure to have you, Nina, talking in the group around this very significant topic that's, in all of our lives as parents at the moment. Before we do wrap up, would you like to tell us a little bit more about the 2 programs that you've got coming up, which are for children?
Yes. Okay. So I'm doing 2 offers. The first offer is a workshop for children from the ages 7 to 12. Now, this workshop I run, like I said before, I run 27 different skills, teaching children on an intellectual level what happens to them. And I shared that in some of the skills before. But also teaching them how to come into their emotional being, how to open up their energy, how to release and use their emotions as their triggers, as their gifts. So it's a very powerful workshop. I've been running that workshop for 3 years. I've already done one online, and it's worked really beautifully. The rest of them have been in person. So I'm going to share that into the details of this workshop in the next few days. So if someone here is interested, come on to my Facebook page, which is called Neal Innerlightened, and that's that page. Or you can just friend me on my personal page, which is just Ina Neal. Or the other thing that you can do is you can also go into innerlightened.com and sign up for the what do they call them? The newsletters. And you will automatically receive one of the stories, actually, from my one of the stories out of the 27 different, and it's all about our self-talk. That in itself is a very, very powerful story. So if you sign up to that, you'll receive, a sample of the story. So at least you can see some of this, and all the stories are different, but you can at least see that. So that workshop will be coming up, and I will post it in my events on my Facebook page, but I will also share it in my email. So if you want that, just come in and like my page, or you can even message me and say, can you make sure to tag me on it? I'm happy to do that. I could just do a quick, tag. So that's the first offer. You can also go onto my website and look at all the different skills I teach so that you're aware of what that would look like. So that's the first offer. That's quite easy. It's something that I've done for, like I said, 3 years, but there's something that I'm really, really excited about. And that is we're in the midst of creating a course for teens. So it's for the ages 13 to 19. And it's all along all of this that we're sharing here, coming into our energy, coming into our triggers. But it's also, again, highly informational as well, because teens want to know what's going on in their bodies. They want to know what's going on in their minds. And again, it's all going to be virtual. And so it's going to be both informational and experiential, where they're going to feel it. They're going to do practices. They're going to come in. Now, here's the thing is, because I've never offered it before, I'm offering it for free. So I'm going to cap it, because I don't know what it's going to look like. I'm capping it between 10 and 15 teens. And what I'm going to need them to do is commit to it and also give me feedback. And that's where there's going to be a lot of creation and healing there. Like even in the feedback, when they come back and feel into their own divine power, right? Their own intelligence, and say, this is what worked for me, and this is what didn't work for me. There is so much awareness in even just that. So I'm really, really excited about that. So if anybody that you know is interested, I will share this also on my Facebook page. But for this, I'm definitely I would highly recommend that you go on my email list so that you can get it instantly, because sometimes Facebook have different algorithms and you might not see it. So if this is something that you're interested for your teen, please even give me a shout out, because I can start even adding the numbers. I'm going to start it I'm launching it in about 3 weeks to a month. And it's going to be about a 7 to 8 week course. Now, here's where the what I'm also going to be doing is when I share that, I'm going to also share a video of myself directly speaking to your teen. So you don't need to explain what it's going to look like, which is where a lot of the challenges rise with teens, because you're going to be like, I've got this course, and the teen's like, nah.
I don't
So
want to do that.
I'm not doing
Yeah.
that. And you also don't really know how to explain it. You're going to say to these kids, you know, it's about your emotions, and they're going to be like, I'm not even going close to it. So I'm going to do a short 5-minute video where you could say, just look at it, and then let them decide if that's something that they want to commit to. So those two things, if you're interested, just reach out in many different ways. Innerlightened.com. Ina Neal is my personal. Ina Neal Innerlightened is my page group. Or you can even email me on ina@innerlightened.com. So it's all quite easy. Jacqueline, if you don't mind, just share some of those little links.
Yeah, what I'll do is I'll put all of those links that you've said under this video as well in the group, and yeah, we can share the love. So how exciting to be working with teens. I think that, I know that I've definitely got some parents of teens in this group. So yeah, get in quick if there's a cap on it. Is there a cap on the other one for the younger kids too?
Yeah, there is a cap because that's I keep that quite personal, so children can be seen and heard. So I take up to 8 to 10 kids. It just depends. So there's a bit of a cap on that there is a cap on that as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And
yeah.
when is the next one of that one starting there?
That one is starting in 2 weeks, and I'll put in all the details on my Facebook page after this weekend. By Monday, I'll have the events on that one. And so if you can get in on even the email list, you'll get the details, you'll get the links to both of those by next week.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Awesome. That's really exciting. And I'm really pleased to have been able to have you in this space to be able to share that.
Thank you.
So thank you so much, Ina, for joining us. It has been an absolute pleasure to have you here and talking about this wonderful topic. And I'm hoping that we can get together another time and talk about something completely different.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Thank you so much for having me. And thank you to all of you for, just being here. Because the minute we step into even being here, you are allowing your greatness to shine, the greatness of who you are. So thank you all for being here. Thank you for inviting me. This is definitely my purpose, to share these messages as I know it is yours. So Jacqueline, thank you for having this platform, opening up the space, and doing the work that you do in the world. Thank you.
Such a pleasure. All right. Lots of love, and talk soon.
Bye.
Bye.